Gracious and loving God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the gifts for the mothers and those who are the mothers in our lives to be with us. But we thank you for the continued grace with our love and our lives that we continue to follow your way, allowing us to follow that plan as we move forward in our lives. I pray that you will come into each of our hearts and souls this morning as we hear your words, the words of wisdom and grace and love. And now ask that you touch my lips of clay, mold them into the words that need to be spoken this day. And the words that come from my mouth, along with the meditations on each and every one of our hearts, be ever acceptable to you in Christ we pray. Amen. So have you ever had the opportunity to see or watch a major building being demolished? Or even seen when they're going to demolish one of those Las Vegas casinos where you see this huge explosion and these sticks of dynamite that have been placed throughout the building. And the first thing that comes down is the massive roof, and then bit by bit, you see the rest of the building come crumbling to the ground. Or sadly, back when the Twin Towers were sabotaged in New York, we saw how 110 floors came tumbling down, creating this massive eruption of smoke and debris, massively engulfing the streets of New York City. This morning we're going to look at the idea of the demolition process of rebuilding projects. And we're in the midst of our series, as you know, Fixer Upper, of course, a Church for Me series, which is about building something, but building what we need because we have that vision, and we're using that idea of remodel or to remold, as you may have it. Just out of curiosity, how many of us have some type of project going on in our lives, whether a home improvement project or a work project or just a project that you've taken on? A few hands. And those of you who were boldly enough to raise your hand, are those projects that are dangling maybe a month, 4 months, a year, when I said I'll get back to it projects? I know I certainly have those projects in my life that when you start them, you start to procrastinate, and then they keep getting further and further down the line. Well, unfortunately, I don't have any encouragement for those in those categories because I fall in there right with you. But then there are those who just love to start projects. But it takes something different to finish a project than it does to start the project itself. And we're going to take a little look at that, as it sometimes takes more energy in the front end than the back end of the project. And we're looking, of course, at the story of Nehemiah, and as I mentioned last week, Nehemiah is really a great story to look at. I also challenged you last week to engage and read the entire book of Nehemiah over these next 4 weeks. It's only 13 chapters, and it's not a long read, but it's a good read to get into to help mold the future of our lives. You see, Nehemiah is this guy that we see in the story back from around 500 BC. Survived the Babylonian and the Persian empires, as we heard last week. We know at this point in time there was no bad blood between the Jews and the Persians, and the Jews were allowed to go back to their land of Jerusalem, and they were able to go begin to redo some things. And if you get into the book of Ezra, it's a book about how they rebuilt the temple. They rebuilt the temple, and the walls around it were still undone. And as we talked about last week, and if you missed it, you can always go back and watch it online, but in a nutshell, those walls were the security for the tribe. Any culture or any community needs because they were vulnerable without having those walls to protect them. And here we have our friend Nehemiah, as we introduced him last week. He was the king's cupbearer, which means he had a proximity to the king himself. Nehemiah had a vision to help his people, and so he goes to the king and goes to the public and tells the king that he wants to do something. And the king gives him favor. Not only did the king give him favor, but he gave him the supplies, gave him the security detail, gave him the whole kit and caboodle. Here the king tells Nehemiah, okay, I want you to go back, rebuild the wall, and it will be good because you'll have the authority. Here's my Roman American Express Platinum card. Get anything you need and make it happen. I'm going to empower you to do that. So here's Nehemiah turning his entire life upside down to be a blessing to those in the world who have been turned upside down. Now last week we talked about just being prayer askers, but you'll be willing to let God use you and to be the answer to someone else's prayer. It's a big difference when you say, God, I'm going to see the needs around me. God, I'm going to own it. I'm going to claim it. And I'm going to leverage everything I have in order to meet the need of someone else around you. This week, I want to talk about the demolition process. And I'm not going to dive into the grammar details of Nehemiah, but rather use Nehemiah's overall story as that springboard to talk about our own remodeling and demolition in our own lives. So before the new can come, the old has to go out. If you're going to remodel and do some major renovation, you want to be able to get rid of some of that stuff. It's like when you're preparing to move from one location to the other. Some people call it spring cleaning. Some people call it, let's get rid of what I haven't seen in 3 years. But spiritually speaking, if you want to do something good, or do something new, or make a new commitment, then the truth is that you must demo a few things in your life. And I'm sure here all of us, we comprise of this fabulous faith community, and we have determined obviously what our vision and our mission is, and where we are to provide and to be that practical gap in all the holes. But people sometimes try to guess the demographic of this congregation, whether it's age or gender, you name it. And what I love about our congregations, our MCC congregations, is that we are a congregation of diversity. We have all kinds of people from every walk of earth. People who have followed Jesus for decades. We have people that don't even know what to do with Jesus at times, even down to having the curiosity of what Jesus and Christianity is all about. But when it comes down to it, are the stats of everyone. And within a faith community such as ours, where there is good energy and good excitement, and today's energy is one of those that you'll maybe walk out of here saying, maybe I've absorbed something out of what the pastor said. So what do you do when you have a vision of what you could be in your life? What do you do when you decide to build something new for God in your own family or life? And then the opposition hits and trouble hits. So what do you do? Because it's not enough just for us to say, Jesus, I think you're awesome. Thanks for dying for me. You're my homeboy. Check out the bumper sticker on the back of my car. We've got to go deeper. Before I'm really able to live God's best life in me, I first have to recognize that there might be some demo. And I'm not saying that we're earning or sweating our way to Jesus, but what I'm saying is that Some of us have spent years building dysfunctional habits or systems and even relationships. All of us. We're all guilty of it. And what do we need to do? Is to take a big old sledgehammer and start knocking out some of those walls. Then God will begin to start bringing up the new walls in our life. Then we will go to function. But then we have to get those old walls down, which are the walls of the opposition. Have you ever been around toddlers? If you haven't, it's an experience, let me tell you. And did you know that there's a wonderful invention out there called the sippy cup? Anyone in the room that have been around a toddler will know what I'm talking about. But what's amazing about a sippy cup is that they have this amazing stopper on them. And let me tell you, they are so advanced now. I mean, if you drop them or tip them over, that stopper will not let the liquid come out. I mean, they are amazing. They are like airtight until you lose one. Only because what's airtight inside doesn't come out. Then you have all this buildup in there. And the next thing you know, you're building up the entire family right inside. Now, traditionally in my family, sippy cups are used for milk or juice. And when it comes to milk, if you didn't know, milk has a shelf life. And I'll leave that to your imagination of what's been sitting airtight in a container like a sippy cup. But every once in a while, you discover that your great niece has lost her sippy cup and doesn't know where she left it. All I can say is on a recent trip back east, visiting my cousin, driving across town to do errands and stuff, we sort of both looked at one another, I guess you could call it that sippy sniff. And here you're driving along thinking that someone has let out a natural odor to discover. And again, I'll leave that to your imagination. And that this lost sippy cup somehow, which has magically gotten lodged in the crack between the back seat and the storage area of the car, and you both look at each other and jump for joy and say, yes, sippy has been found. And then when you crack the lid open, oh my. And as you know, it's human nature that you're not just going to open the lid and pour it down the sink. You're going to take a huge sniff, of course, and say, here, you take a sniff too. But here's the deal. As stinky and gross as it is, creating an entirety of a new biology project right before your eyes, it's not going to magically disappear until you do something about it. So I want to talk about something that does that within our souls. The sin builds up in our souls. At the same time, I'm going to use a weird, maybe scary word, but the word is called a stronghold. And a stronghold is defined as anything that has strong holdings on you. That's what a stronghold is. It doesn't need to be some weird spiritual word or ancestor or something that we don't understand. A stronghold is that of a hold that strangles you, that will choke out the life of God within you. A stronghold of what happens is people say yes to Jesus. Oh yeah, Jesus, I have a vision, like our friend Nehemiah, who has a vision to build a wall. But of course, a spoiler alert, in 52 days, a wall is built that had been down for 141 years. And of course, we know that's amazing, but Nehemiah didn't do it alone. See, Nehemiah had this vision to build this wall and to do something great for God's people, and then gets this opposition just like all of us. It also tells yourself that now that you've gone public with your faith, you've been baptized by God, and you think God is immediately going to use you. And believe me, I know that's not where most of us are in our journeys, but sometimes it happens that when we go public, we're perceived by the things that come with the faith. But you also hear in your head to do something, to break loose. And behind your back, the gods are probably saying and meeting, oh my goodness, someone's had a rough patch. But let's give them a fighting shot. Let's give them that running start, and we'll give back away, and we'll give them whatever it needs to make that new commitment. But let me tell you, it's not always the case. We're often told that all hell now hates you. All hell hates your dreams that God has dropped you in that moment. But the moment you dare to go public, those alarm bells go off and the sirens start blaring all the way down there in hell, believe it or not. And so we have a lot of people who say, yes, Jesus, but don't understand the strongholds in their lives. And all of a sudden, those strongholds are holding us and creates this strangle in a headlock. And it's not because that it's anything weird. It's not because it's anything obscure. It's not lack of sincerity. And it's not because we were baptized. It's because that stronghold didn't get knocked down within yourself. God's going to give you a vision, but when we don't demo correctly, that stronghold will snuff out the vision before it can even become reality of the vision. Hopefully that all makes sense. So here are a few things to get rid of those strongholds in our lives. The first step is deal with demolition before we deal with decoration. Maybe a little bit on a gay slur, but at the same time, we need to demo before we decorate. If you move into a nasty place, cracks everywhere, you have a few options. You can start doing some demo, or you can go to Hobby Lobby if they're even still around. Get a few things and make it look good. Has anyone taken a mat or a picture to hide a crack or a stain in the wall? I mean, not a bad idea. Just put a nail, hang a picture, and the problem's solved. In Scripture, we have this crew of people called Pharisees, or religious leaders. Here, these religious leaders are the ones who would flex their spiritual muscles in the area of strength in order to hide spiritual disease. In the areas of weakness, they would try to distract by showing how spiritual they were. So we need to take a time out for a moment and just an observation from being around a bit that those people who come across the supernatural are really trying to make up for the super secret weakness that they have within inside. Just a side note. If you're the type of person who likes to flaunt how spiritual you are, you better check yourself before you wreck yourself. The next thing we need to do is to get rid of those strongholds is to eliminate the darkness. One of the things, if you ever watched the show Fixer Upper, is that Chip Gaines loves the demo day. You never know what's going to be found. And Joanna really isn't a part of that because she flexes her muscles once the demo is done. You'll see Chip toss toilets from the second floor, bursting down those walls, but you never know what you're going to find. Under the carpets, it could just be a disgusting mess. But behind the walls, as you know, she loves that shiplap. And you'll never know what you're going to find until you start peeling the wallpaper off. And one thing that you find is that there's going to be light everywhere. Because light takes care of mold. Light and heat replace the cold, the wet, the dark. Because mold is nasty when it's dark. When it comes to our spiritual life, you have to eliminate the darkness. You have to live in the light in a way that the shades are drawn and the lights are back on. Because when it comes on, the sin loses its power. And when the light is on, and if you go to Ephesians for a moment, you will hear when the light shines, it exposes even the dark, shadowy things and turns them into pure reflections. So as part of our lives, we need to look at this. We need to invite God in because you have that vision, just like Nehemiah. And when you need to let the light come in, the light of God's presence, the light of God's word, we need to do it. Nehemiah has this deal, but he also has these vulnerable places. And here they're building this wall, and they're where the enemies are in the opposition to him while building the wall. And because of this, he has to station different people at different parts of the wall where there are some openings, and where there are openings that need to be armed, because you never know what's going to happen or they're going to be attacked. So instead of ignoring those vulnerable places, Nehemiah placed people there. And if you go back into Nehemiah a little bit, it says hunt at the vulnerable low sections of the walls as they were exposed and as they organized the families. So at this point, you see Nehemiah is reconditioning and recognizing those vulnerable areas and doing something about it. You can build a wall, but you're not going to be able to build it by yourself. You can build something great, but you're not going to be able to do it alone. We all have vulnerable places in our lives. Some of us have spent our lives wondering where those vulnerable places are, even hiding those places. The next thing is that we have to get rid of those strongholds. We have to use the right tools. When it comes to our spirituality, we need to use those resources. Bottom line is tools. If we go into Corinthians, it says, "For thou we walk in the world, we do not fight according to this world of world wars using rules and warfare. The weapons of the war we're fighting are not the world and are not powered by God. Effectively, that let us tear down those strongholds." So God's recipe for strongholds is that we need to further tell us that demolishing and getting those walls down will open. Even Paul tells us if you have a different stronghold in your life, then there is a different hole or a different tool for that stronghold. If we recall from other things, there are so many resources that we have as a spiritual gift. We need to make sure that we have that Spirit of God within us. We all have the energy and intention to follow Jesus. At the same time as we're carrying those strongholds, we need to keep from having those build. So Nehemiah is out there doing all that he's doing. At the same time, they're off to a great start. But there still are those unfinished projects. But the last thing that we need to do is basically hand over the keys. We need to turn those strongholds over to God, like taking the keys and giving them. And when we do this, all of a sudden, great things will happen. So here we have Nehemiah trying to build a wall, and he goes to these enemies. These guys keep coming to Nehemiah and trying to mess him up, trying to discourage him as they pose as his friends. They pose as people who mean well, but we know they don't. Sanballat and Geshem sent this message, "Come and meet us with us in Interim, in the valley of Ono," and they knew that it was a scheme to hurt him. When someone comes to discourage you from your vision, and you make public your profession to Jesus, you've got this stronghold, and it's tempting. These are the prophetic words to say to the enemy, "I'm doing great work. I can't come now." When we are making a statement to God, we may not have all those well-meaning friends behind us. So in turn, sometimes we just need to say no. Because I'm doing great work and I'm not coming down to be sabotaged. When we are trying to be lured away, we need to take a stance and say, no, I'm doing great work. This is what we are building in our lives because we begin to work. And that word, will, W-I-L-L, is the key word to our faith to be that completion. When it comes to handing over the keys, it's screaming, God, it's all you. So as we continue to build and be vulnerable, we need to demolish all of the sin before we can start rebuilding the good and the faith back into our lives, and that we need to pick our spiritual weapons in the right degrees so we can keep the strongholds out of our lives. Blessings to each of you this morning.